Hi, and welcome to the Nature and Wildlife Discovery Center. I'm Diana, and once again joining me today is Lurch. We're so happy you could join us. It's kind of an exciting day here for us. We are slowly beginning to welcome people back into our facility. So today we are having visitors join us by appointment for small groups for programs and tours. So we're excited to welcome our first group today. They're actually in our visitor area having a presentation by one of our great volunteer interpreters. So they're busy doing that. So Lurch and I have moved to a little outdoor venue here behind the building. You can see the beautiful bluffs behind us. It's a lovely day in southeastern Colorado. It's kind of overcast and we're expecting some rain later in the day, which is always good news for us. So here at the Nature and Wildlife Discovery Center, of course, we are a multi-facility organization. We have sites both here in Pueblo. We have our river campus and of course the Raptor Center, which we're visiting with you from today. And then we have our mountain campus, which is located in Beulah, Colorado, which is to the southwest of Pueblo in the beautiful Beulah Valley. And it's a lovely 600-acre park just filled with ponderosa pines and scrub oak. And oh my gosh, it's just lovely. I actually live up there, so the park is my backyard. And it's a great site where we do a lot of education, outdoor recreation. And one of the really cool features at the mountain park is it's got some really cool historic buildings, and one of those is the Horseshoe Lodge, which is our home base. We have our offices and things in part of the lodge, and like it says, Horseshoe Lodge, it is a horseshoe-shaped building. And then the other 2/3 of it are for housing people. One part is a beautiful restored historic lodge with individual guest rooms, which you can rent. So if you're looking for a weekend getaway and want to go to a beautiful quiet spot, the mountain campus in Beulah is the place to go. And you can of course find information on reserving lodging at our facilities at hikeandlearn.org. And then the other side of the horseshoe is for group lodging. We have dormitories and can accommodate groups coming in, maybe scout troops or a classroom that wants to come up and spend the night and do some education or hiking or just relax in the beautiful mountain scenery. So a lot of things going on. And of course our river campus is open. Lots of people are enjoying the Arkansas River, picnicking on our grounds, fishing. The river is busy with lots of kayakers and inner tubers. So people are getting out and about and enjoying nature. And here at the Raptor Center, like I mentioned, we're starting to slowly welcome a few people at a time back into our facilities to learn about the birds of prey, because that's our job, teaching people about birds of prey, of course, and then helping them when they're sick or injured. And Lurch is one of our resident raptors. A lot of people are familiar with Lurch. He's out and about with us all the time, and actually a lot of times when we are scheduled to go to programs and things, they often request Lurch be in attendance because he's just a charming turkey vulture. Lurch got started, more than 30 years ago. He was injured, damaged his humeral bone in his left wing, and that left him with a physical disability. So Lurch is unable to fly. So he remained with the facility on the west slope where he was from. They kept him for about 20 years as a teaching bird, and then sadly that facility had to close their doors. He went to another facility for a couple of years and then they had to close, and Lurch had to be placed once again, and he ended up coming to our doors, and he's been with us now for about 13 years, and he's just a treasure. We are so fortunate to have him along. He's very personable. He seems to very enjoy, and I think he's understanding that when we're on camera that you're watching him, because he's definitely paying attention to everyone today. So Lurch and I visit often, and we like to keep each other company in the evening. Sometimes I just hang out with him in the enclosure and do charts because he's just good company. And anyway, we were talking and Lurch is like, hey, you should talk about my favorite topic. And of course, I know what Lurch's favorite topic is: food. People often ask, what do you feed the birds of prey? Well, we try to feed them exactly as close as we can to what they would eat in nature. Of course, birds of prey are carnivores. They get all their nutrition by eating animals, and not just the meat of the animals. They eat actually the whole entire animal if it's small enough. So we have to try to mimic or copy that diet to the best of our ability. So to do that, we use lots of different food resources. And of course, we are going to be talking about animals because that's what birds of prey eat, and that's what we have to be able to provide for them. So how do we do that? Well, we do it lots of ways. One way is that we purchase food. A lot of the animals that we purchase are things like rats and mice. We purchase quail. And those come from commercial companies. There are lots of companies across the country who raise rodents and other animals for food resources to sell to zoos and nature centers, rehabilitation facilities like ours. And they do a good job of, raising a high quality, very nutritious animal, humanely care for it, and then humanely kill it so that it can be shipped frozen. So it's always interesting when the UPS or FedEx drivers come and it says frozen meat on the boxes. They're like, what kind of meat are you guys buying? And we're like, oh, there's about 4,000 rats in there. And then you just see their face go, ooh, gross. Or we also order mealworms, insects. Some birds of prey, like kites, Swainson's hawks, kestrels, flammulated owls, they like insects, so we do have to keep insects on hand. We do purchase those, so we might purchase mealworms, superworms, crickets, things like that for the birds to feed to them. We also maintain small colonies of rats, mice, and mealworms here at the center. We don't have a lot of space, so we do have small colonies. And one of the nice things about raising your own rodents for food is that you really can control what they're eating and be able to provide a good diet and a healthy existence for those feeder animals. So to keep them healthy, of course, they're cleaned very frequently. They get obviously fresh water, fresh food every day. We give them a little bit of a commercial rat diet, but we actually boost that. We give them a lot of seeds, which they enjoy, fruits and vegetables. The mice, we raise mice as well. They like insects, so we do give them occasionally mealworms or crickets just to boost their nutrition so that we're producing this lovely, healthy animal so that it can create, when it's fed, a beautiful, healthy bird of prey. So we do raise some food, and then we do receive donations, and that's really wonderful. We can get that. One animal that we get donated by local rabbit breeders are rabbits. And some people are upset when I start talking about animals used as food, especially on the topic of rabbits. So the rule here at the Raptor Center is bunnies are pets, rabbits are food. So we get in rabbits for food. And these are just from local breeders. A lot of people, they breed rabbits for show, or they breed rabbits for food. A lot of people do raise meat rabbits to feed their families. And sometimes they have too many rabbits, or if they're raising show rabbits, not all the rabbits qualify for shows. They don't have all the characteristics they need. So these breeders have all these excess rabbits. So just instead of killing them and disposing of the carcasses, they can actually donate those animals to us for food. We humanely keep them and kill them and put them in our freezers until we need them for food. And I have to tell you, it's a wonderful food resource. When you're feeding eagles and vultures and a lot of big birds of prey, with having rabbits available to help feed them is a huge chunk of our food budget, and that we don't have to spend. So we really appreciate all the folks in the region that donate rabbits to us. We also have some pet stores and local colleges and universities that donate their control animals for rats and mice. We don't take any rodents, of course, from the wild. We can't be sure that they haven't been in an area where someone has been using poison or something like that. So any rodents that come into the facility, we have to make sure that they've been raised domestically and they're not from the wild, just in case. We want to be sure. We wouldn't want to accidentally poison one of our recovering birds of prey. That would just be heartbreaking for us. Other things that come in is fish. Sometimes fishermen, they catch a trout and maybe it gets injured and they're not able to release it back into the river because it's the wrong size for them to keep, or maybe they've caught up their limit and they're not going to eat them all. They'll drop them off. We also have a lot of support from Colorado Parks and Wildlife. I know the local aquatics biologists, and they're great when they're doing their fish surveys. Sometimes the fish don't survive because the way they're netted and trapped. They do lose quite a bit of fish, and instead of just disposing of those animals, they'll bring them to us and we can put those in storage for food later on. And that's really great because some of the birds of prey will eat fish. I know Lurch likes to eat fish. Being a scavenger, he's not that particular about what animal that's dead he's eating. He will enjoy it. So trout, we get all kinds of fish in, and if the fish are a species that our birds don't really like, or they're too big. So for example, one time the parks folks brought us some pike, and some of the pike were small and they were okay for food, but some of them were huge. In fact, one of them was like, I don't know, 3.5, 4 feet long. It was a monster pike, and we were just like, nobody's gonna eat this. What are we gonna do with this huge pike? And then we remembered that our friends at Wet Mountain Wildlife, they do large mammals like bear and fox and coyote. They also do deer, antelope, those kind of guys. We knew they had a whole mess of bear cubs that they were taking care of. So we called and said, hey, you want some fish for the bears? And so we sent those big pike. We froze them for them, and then we were able to transport them up to them. And let me tell you, those cubs had a great time with that 4.5-foot pike. The folks up there said they put the pike in with all the other food for the cubs, and they opened the slide door so that, because the cubs are on one side while they're prepping food on the other side of the enclosure, and they opened the door to let the cubs come in and feast. And she was going to take a picture of the cubs eating the pike for us, and she said she turned around to pick up her camera, and as she turned back around, the only part of the pike she saw was it disappearing into the bear den. So they obviously had a great time eating that fish. So we try to help each other out when we get in food or other resources that maybe we can't use. We definitely want to let the local rehabbers know that we have some surplus and that we can share the wealth. And you know, really rehabilitating, even though we're not necessarily all doing the same species, we're all in it for the same thing. We want to help the animals out, and certainly if I have a resource that I can't use, I definitely want to pass that on to somebody who can. And it's just community. That it's a community effort, and it's the same way, just like with us. Sometimes we have excess and we donate it so that maybe others can take advantage of it, and it's just the same. We're all in this together, and we really have to work together for everyone's benefit, and that's what works. So we get fish in, and quail, and all kinds of critters come. People also, hunters can be a great source of food for us. We do see a lot of hunters bringing us deer or elk meat, which is really great. We do have to be cautious though. We can't use any deer, elk, antelope, any animals that have been killed with lead. That's something that we can't put to use, but hunters that are using alternative ammunition, it's great. We can put some of that meat to use for the birds as well. And certainly when we prepare the food, sometimes a whole animal goes out to the bird because it's healthy and it's recovering and it's capable of dealing with it. But sometimes we have to break the animal down for the bird. So for instance, maybe the bird has a broken leg. And I don't know if you saw on Facebook a couple weeks ago, we had a little kestrel in and she had a fractured leg. And by the way, if you've been following us, her splint just came off. So I'm going to get some pictures of her tomorrow and get her up on Facebook because she's so happy to have that splint off and moving around in a much bigger enclosure. I know, Lurch, huh? Splints suck, don't they? It's not fun to have a splint. But anyhow, she couldn't really hold and tear her food with only one good leg. So we had to cut the mouse up into tiny bite-sized pieces for her. So we have to break the food down sometimes into appropriate sizes for the animals. Or like if it's a big rabbit, obviously the rabbit can be butchered into a lot of smaller pieces to feed a whole lot of birds. So there's different ways that we deal with all these animals and getting them out to the birds for food. And sometimes people ask me, they're like, oh, how can you do that? And it's just like, well, you know what? I don't really think about it much anymore. I've been doing it for 35 years. So for me, it's just second nature to prepare the food for the animals. But we do have a rule here, especially when it comes to killing things. We do, obviously, something has to die basically every day at the Raptor Center, whether it's an animal who's been seriously injured, is suffering and needs to be euthanized, or it's a mouse that has to die so I can feed a baby kestrel in the ICU. So something has to die every day, pretty much, and that's just a fact of life. And there's just, basically, this is life. It's life and death. That's how life rolls. You can't have one without the other. So we do everything that we can in the most humane way possible and provide a good diet for Lurch and the other birds of prey. And I do have a rule: if you kill something, you get to feed it to the bird so that you can complete the cycle. And I know this sounds silly and ridiculous and maybe a little gross to you, but the happiest sound is when you deliver dinner, and after you've delivered and you stand outside for a few minutes and you listen. This is kind of gross, but it's actually kind of cool. And you can hear the birds tearing the animals, and you can hear the bones cracking. And that for us is a happy sound, because we know we've delivered them a good meal and they're happily chowing down. And that's a great thing. Now, I know to some of you, you're thinking, oh my gosh, that'd be horrific to hear. But actually, you know what? It's actually a good sound. And frankly, next time you're in a restaurant, if you are, I know a lot of us aren't going out to eat yet, but we're slowly getting back into restaurants. Listen to humans eating. We don't sound very good either. So it's kind of what your experience is when it comes to eating. But for us, happy raptors are a really important thing, and eating is really great. And now the flip side of feeding the birds is you have to clean up after them. And I gotta tell you, it's much more disgusting to clean up after the birds than to prep their food, because some of them make a huge mess. And yeah, you can only pick up so many entrails before you're just like, oh, this is so disgusting, I can't handle it. But when I clean up, if I have the chore in the morning, a lot of times the volunteers do this work, but if I get to do the work of cleaning up after the birds in the morning and charting what they've eaten, one of the things that I do is, because I love this little guy so much, is I do his cage last. I go in with the hose and the bucket and the rake last to Lurch's cage, and I sit down my bucket full of disgusting, nasty things and I walk off to clean and maybe do a little raking and scrub out his water dish and things like that. And of course, the minute I walk away from the bucket, Lurch, being the inquisitive little fellow that he is, he does his favorite thing, which is to dump my bucket of nasty, disgusting things, go through it in search of a very tender morsel that I might have picked up. And that makes him so excited to go through my bin, but for me means I have to clean it all back up again. But he gets so excited if he finds like maybe a half a mouse or a part of a rat that wasn't eaten or a chunk of rabbit, because he just grabs it and runs with it, and he's just so excited. And I'm glad to make his day, giving him a tender morsel. And some days when the birds have done a really great job of eating and there's not much, sometimes I'll go in and don't tell the other staff, but sometimes I'll go in and get him a mouse and just reward him because he's so sweet and special, that he deserves having a mouse, even though because there's nothing really in my bucket for him, but he's just a sweetie. So Lurch, being a vulture, obviously that is his job, is scavenging and cleaning up. So we want him to be able to mimic that habit as best as we can, and certainly going through a bucket is one of those ways to scavenge for him. And you know, vultures are really amazing birds, and that's their job in nature, is to be the cleanup crew. They clean up the environment. They look around for dead things and consume them. And that's a really important thing, because if you think about it, if a animal, like say a rabbit, dies from a disease, such as there's a bacterial infection that rabbits get called tularemia. And I know there's also, I've been reading, I can't remember what it's called, but they also have a viral infection right now in rabbits. I know the domestic rabbit breeders are having issues with it as well. But let's say the rabbit dies from that virus. Well, if the carcass just lays there, something else, another mammal could come along, other rabbits, and pick up that virus from that carcass, or that bacterial infection from that carcass, and then that could make that animal ill. So maybe you're out walking with your dog, and your dog picks up that dead rabbit and eats part of it, and he could consume that bacteria that killed the rabbit, make him ill as well. Or maybe you pick it up and you've got it on your hands. So you want to be really careful with it. But if the vultures find it first, they can consume it. And because of adaptations or specialized tools in their body, they can basically eliminate that bacteria. And there's a lot of things going on in vultures that help them do that. One, they have really high body temperatures. So Lurch, naturally, his body temperature is around 104, 106 degrees. So he's hot, not just hot looking, but he's hot inside. So a lot of viruses and things, bacteria, microbes can't live at those temperatures. So one, that would kill it right there. Also, his digestive system, his enzymes are incredibly acidic. So a lot of the microbes, they can't survive the acids in his stomach and his intestinal tract, and that would kill them. Also in his intestinal tract, he has, of course, a lot of bacteria, just like we do. He has flora and fauna in there of little microbes. And he actually does have, I was just reading an article not too long ago, that they actually found some flesh-eating bacteria in vulture intestinal tract. So he's even got flesh-eating bacteria in there to help him break down animals. So he's just got some amazing things going on to help us stop disease, and that's his job. And we're grateful to him for doing it. In North America, vultures are doing well. They are protected in our country through the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, and they are thriving. They're doing very well. But in other parts of the world, they are not. They fall victim to poachers who intentionally poison them, because when poachers illegally take a large animal, the vultures, of course, will find it and come in. And of course, any law enforcement folks, rangers working in the area, they actually keep a track of vultures and what their activities are, because often the vultures will tip off what's happening. So poachers will kill an animal, poison it, and leave it there to kill the vultures when they come in, so that the vultures don't give them away. So there's a lot going on. Habitat loss, lead poisoning is certainly a really dangerous thing for vultures and other scavenging birds, and mammals for that matter too. So a lot of things, power lines. So there's a lot of issues, loss of habitat. So they're definitely a bird being studied, being reintroduced in some areas, and just trying to get them to thrive once more, because they are so important to our planet and their role in the various ecosystems around the world. So they're just lovely, lovely birds, and definitely worth our attention and support. Right, Lurch? He's like, oh yeah, look at me, I'm so handsome. He's a wonderful guy. Well, we hope that you're having a great day, you're staying safe, being well. I'm always reminding you to please practice your social distancing, wear your mask when you're out in public, because it's working in some areas. States that had strong mask programs, actually it is helping to prevent spread of the disease. So we want to, it's spiking in parts of the country, so please be safe. I, like you, want this to be over as soon as possible so we can get back to work and traveling around with the birds and doing education, things like that. So wear your mask, social distance, be well, be safe. If you are interested in visiting our center, certainly you can make an appointment to come through. We're finding, for us, we're a skeleton crew of people right now, so for us to have a group come in at a scheduled time for a tour or program is the best way to welcome visitors back. So if you're interested in that, certainly give our main office a call at 719-485-4444, and they can get you in touch with this folks to schedule that activity, and we're happy to do that for you. So from the Nature and Wildlife Discovery Center, thanks for tuning in, and hopefully we might see you and your family here visiting us very soon. Take care.